A Roman death sentence, a cave, 13 years of silence. What came out would change Jewish mysticism forever. Not legend, not metaphor. This is a story recorded in the Babylonian Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat, page 33, as an account so strange, so charged with divine electricity, that the ancient sages who wrote it down felt compelled to preserve every detail: the carob tree that appeared from nowhere, the spring of fresh water in a dry cave, the garments they removed to keep from wearing them out, the moment they emerged, burning everything in sight with the fire in their eyes, and then the voice from heaven that said, go back to your cave. Think about that for one moment. Think about what it means when God tells a man who has already spent years in total isolation to return, to go deeper, to sit longer in the dark. What is it that a human soul discovers in that kind of silence? What does a person become when the entire world is stripped away? When there are no markets, no conversation, no distractions, no flattery, no noise, nothing but the words of God echoing off stone walls in the Galilean hills. You are watching this right now because there is something in you, maybe something you cannot even name, that is hungry for an answer to that question. You sense there are depths to existence you have not yet touched. You have a feeling, persistent and quiet, that the version of life you are living is not the whole story. And you are right. You are completely right. That hunger is not a character flaw. That restlessness is not ingratitude. That longing for something deeper than what the ordinary day offers is the most spiritually healthy thing about you. And it deserves to be taken seriously. If what I am about to share moves something inside you, if this story speaks to the place you have been hiding from, press the like button and leave a comment below with these words: my cave becomes my calling. Write it. My cave becomes my calling. That declaration matters more than you know. And I will come back to it before this video ends. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it now and turn on notifications. Because every week we go deep into the wisdom of the ancient sages to find what your modern life is desperate for. Now let us go back 2,000 years. To the Galilee. To a hillside. To a cave. And to one of the most extraordinary human stories ever preserved in religious literature. The year is somewhere in the middle of the 2nd century of the Common Era. The Roman Emperor Hadrian has been pressing his heel into the neck of Judea with increasing brutality. This is the same era that saw the destruction of the Second Temple, the crushing of the Bar Kokhba revolt, and the systematic execution of the great Torah teachers of the age. Rabbi Akiva, one of the most celebrated sages in all of Jewish history and the primary teacher of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, is already in Roman chains. The world that the Jewish people had known, the world of the great academies, the world of living rabbinic authority speaking to a living community in a living land, is being dismantled, piece by piece, decree by decree. The noose is tightening on every form of Jewish public life into this world. One ordinary day, 3 rabbis are sitting together: Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. And someone introduces a topic that seems harmless enough on the surface. The Romans have built things in this land: markets, bathhouses, bridges. Rabbi Yehuda, the pragmatist, offers an acknowledgement. These are useful structures. These are functional things. Can we not appreciate them? Rabbi Elazar stays quiet, carefully, cautiously quiet, the silence of a man who has learned that in an occupied land some words cost more than they are worth. And then Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai speaks. He cannot help himself. He never can. He says what every person in the room is thinking but will not say. He says that everything the Romans built, they built for themselves alone. The markets, for their own commerce. The bathhouses, for their own pleasure. The bridges, to collect their own tolls. Those words travel. They always do. A man in that room, a man who was once a student of Rabbi Shimon himself, carries those words directly to the Roman authorities. And the verdict comes swiftly and without appeal. Death. Understand what that sentence meant in practical terms. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was not a young man on the run with nothing to lose. He was a sage of the Mishnaic period, one of the Tanaim, the great teachers whose words would form the backbone of the oral Torah. He was a pillar of the Jewish community. He had students who relied on him. He had a wife. He had his son, Rabbi Elazar. He had a life built from decades of study and teaching and relationship and reputation. And all of it, in a single afternoon, became worthless under Roman law. One conversation, one moment of speaking truth to the wrong audience, and the entire world he had constructed was gone. He and his son fled first to a study hall, where his wife quietly brought them bread and water each day, maintaining the illusion of their normal life as cover. But the Romans kept searching, kept pushing, and the walls of that borrowed safety began to close in. So they went deeper. Without telling anyone where they were going, they slipped away and disappeared into a cave in the hills of the Galilee, in the village region of Pekian. And there, in that cave, according to the Talmudic account in Tractate Shabbat, something happened that no one had planned for. A carob tree appeared at the mouth of the cave. A spring of fresh water bubbled up from the dry earth. And two men who had come into that cave as fugitives, running for their lives, began to go deeper into God than they had ever gone before. Do you feel the shape of that transition? Something about the moment when every human option disappears. When the career is gone, when the reputation is gone, when the social world and all of its demands and rewards and structures is completely, irreversibly gone. When there is absolutely nothing left but you and the Almighty. That is not just a historical detail. That is a spiritual architecture. It is the architecture of the cave. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai walked into it. Not because he chose it from a position of power, but because everything else was taken from him. Are you tired of the version of spiritual life that stays safely on the surface? Have you ever wondered why real transformation always seems to require a kind of loss you were not ready for? Do you feel like there is a version of you that has never been allowed to breathe? Buried under the noise of ordinary life, waiting for a cave that you keep postponing. I am asking because the story we are about to unpack was not preserved in the Talmud as a fairy tale. It was preserved as a map of what happens to a human being when they go all the way in. My name is Ezra, and I have spent 30 years studying the great mystical traditions of the ancient sages, sitting with these texts, arguing with them, being broken open by them, and finding inside them a precision of spiritual instruction I have not found anywhere else. I am not here to perform wisdom for you. I am here because what I found genuinely changed how I live, how I pray, and what I understand transformation to cost. And today, the story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, his cave, and what he brought out of it is the most important thing I can offer you. Now, let us talk about what actually happened inside that cave. The Talmud tells us that Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Elazar buried themselves up to their necks in sand during the day to study. They removed their garments to preserve them, wearing them only at the times of prayer. Let that image settle in you for a moment. Two human beings, buried in the earth, stripped of everything external, reduced to the bare minimum of physical existence. No titles, no community standing, no possessions of any consequence, no news from the outside world, no audience. Only the Torah, only the words, only the encounter with the divine through pure, uninterrupted study and prayer. Hour after hour, day after day, in the dark. Here is what I want you to see in this. When you strip a human being down to that level, something extraordinary begins to happen. The noise of the ego quiets. The constant negotiation with social reality stops. The performing, the positioning, the careful management of how others perceive you. All of it becomes irrelevant because there is no audience left. And when the audience disappears completely, something else steps forward. Something that was always there but could never be heard over the noise. The mystics call it the neshama, the innermost soul at its deepest register. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, buried in that cave, cut off from the world he had known, began to hear that register with a clarity that changed him in a way that no amount of normal learning could have produced. This is not poetry. This is the process. The Zohar, the great foundational text of Jewish mysticism, the text whose very name in Hebrew means splendor or radiance, is traditionally attributed to the wisdom that crystallized during those years in the cave. The word Zohar points to a light that is not ordinary. The mystics describe it as the hidden primordial light of creation, the light that shone at the beginning and was then concealed, stored away for a time when the world would be ready to receive it. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, buried in his cave, is understood by the Kabbalistic tradition as someone who reached back through the layers of concealment and touched it. Whether you approach the Zohar as a devoted mystic or as a historically curious student of religion, the question it poses to every serious reader is the same. What kind of silence produces that kind of light? What does a person have to become to receive that kind of revelation? And the answer the sages give, across all the centuries of commentary, is this: you have to be willing to go all the way into the cave, not to visit it, not to pass through it on your way somewhere more comfortable, all the way in. I want to stop here and say something directly to you, because I know why you are watching this. You are watching because there is a version of your life that you know exists, that you can sense at the edges of your experience, but that you have not been able to reach. Not for lack of trying, not for lack of wanting, but because reaching it requires something you have been putting off. Something that looks too much like surrender, too much like loss, too much like the cave. And so you have been circling the entrance for months or years, finding reasons to stay just outside it. I understand that. I have done it myself. The entrance to the cave never looks like an invitation. It always looks like a threat. But pay attention to the next sentence. The cave is always the thing that looks like the end. But in the spiritual economy that the sages describe, the end of one world is always the preparation for the real one. Now, I want to tell you about what happened when they tried to come out, because this is where the story becomes almost unbearably precise in its spiritual instruction. 12 years. According to the account in Tractate Shabbat, after 12 years buried in the sand, studying and praying in total isolation, Elijah, the prophet, appears at the entrance to the cave. The account is spare and astonishing. Elijah says simply, "Who will tell Bar Yochai that the Roman emperor has died and the decree has been canceled, the sentence has been lifted? They are free to go." And they emerge. These two men who have spent over a decade in total communion with the deepest layers of Torah wisdom, they step out of the cave, blinking, into the ordinary world of Galilee. And they see people, farmers, plowing fields, sowing seeds, living their ordinary, unremarkable, entirely human lives. And Rabbi Shimon is not comforted by what he sees. He is undone by it, because after 12 years of pure divine consciousness, the ordinary world looks to him like an unforgivable abandonment of the eternal. He cannot reconcile the depth he has lived with the surface he now watches. The Talmud says that every place he and his son directed their gaze was burned. Their spiritual intensity had become literal. They could not look at the mundane world without scorching it. And then the voice came from heaven. Read this very carefully. A divine voice emerged and said to them, "Did you emerge from the cave in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave. Return. Go back. You are not ready yet." That sentence from heaven is one of the most precise and penetrating pieces of spiritual direction in all of Jewish literature. And here is why I say that. It was not a punishment. It was not a rejection. It was a calibration. God was not saying that their depth was wrong. God was not saying that what they had found in the cave was invalid. God was saying that depth without the capacity to love the ordinary world is not complete wisdom. That the highest level of mystical attainment is not the one where you transcend the world and look down on it in holy contempt. It is the one where you come back to the world and see it the way God sees it. From the inside, with tenderness, with patience, with the full understanding that the farmer plowing his field is not abandoning the eternal, he is living inside it. One more year, 12 months. That is what the Talmud says they spent in the cave the second time. 12 more months. And when they emerged again, the fire was still there, unchanged in its intensity. But something in the relationship between the fire and the man who carried it had changed. The Talmud uses this extraordinary phrase. It says that everywhere Rabbi Elazar would strike, Rabbi Shimon would heal. The son still carrying the raw, unmediated intensity of the cave. The Father now containing both the fire and the mercy. The Father now able to do what the highest wisdom has always done in every tradition, hold the lightning and protect the people from it at the same time. This is the shape of genuine transformation. Not the moment you are first overwhelmed by a truth so large you cannot yet contain it. That is the first emergence. That is the burning, and it is real. And it is necessary. The second emergence is different in kind, not just in degree. That is when the truth has been fully metabolized, when it has moved from fire into warmth, when it has become not a weapon the soul wields against the ordinary world, but a gift the soul offers to it. Stop right there, because what I just described is not only the story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, it is the story of every human being who has ever gone deep enough in any genuine spiritual tradition to be truly changed, and then had to figure out how to bring that change back into a world that did not ask for it and does not entirely know what to do with it. The re-entry is always the harder part. The cave is hard in its own way, but the re-entry is harder. You may know this from your own experience. Perhaps there was a season of real loss in your life, an illness, a grief, a crisis of faith, A period of prayer so raw and concentrated, it genuinely altered your sense of what is real. And then ordinary life resumed its pace around you, and you felt the distance between what you had touched in that dark place and what the world was asking you to perform and produce and pretend. That feeling of distance is the first emergence, the burning. And if you were willing to go back into the cave, back into the depth and the silence and the honest reckoning, and to stay there long enough for the burning to become warmth, something shifted, not just in what you understood, in how you loved. The Zohar, that great crystallization of Rabbi Shimon's cave wisdom, teaches that the highest light in creation is concealed, not hidden from us in cruelty or caprice. Concealed, the way a seed is concealed inside the ground, so that its emergence, when it finally comes, is not dimmed but multiplied. The word Zohar itself, meaning radiance or splendor, points to a light that is not the ordinary light of the afternoon sun. It is the light that the mystical tradition says God drew back at the moment of creation, preserving it for those who would seek it in the darkness. At the depth, beneath all the layers of noise and ordinary daylight, and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, buried in his cave, is the tradition's great exemplar of someone who went deep enough to find it. Now, I want to give you something practical, because wisdom that stays in the realm of story, however beautiful the story, is not doing its full work. Wisdom has to come out of the cave and into the hands of the people. So I want to offer you what I call the 4 movements of the cave. These are drawn entirely from the pattern of Rabbi Shimon's own story, as it is recorded in the Talmud and elaborated in the centuries of commentary. And they are applicable to your life, in your circumstances, right now. The first movement is the sentence. This is the moment when the world takes something from you that you did not choose to give. It might be a job you built over 20 years, a relationship you had organized your whole life around, a version of yourself, a role, an identity, a set of expectations you had carefully maintained, a loss that redefines the entire landscape of your life, not just its contents. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai received a death sentence from the Roman government. You have likely received your own version of that sentence at some point in your life. And if you have not yet, you will. The cave always begins with a sentence that you did not write for yourself. The cave always begins from outside your control. Here is what the tradition teaches about this moment, about this first movement. The sentence is not the end of your story. The sentence is the beginning of your initiation. The cave is ahead, and the carob tree is already growing at its entrance before you arrive. There is always provision in the place of stripping. The supply appears before you understand you need it. But you have to go in. You have to stop standing at the entrance and actually enter the dark. The second movement is the burial. This is the active, daily, ongoing choice to go deeper rather than to escape. Rabbi Shimon and his son sat buried in sand up to their necks every single day. They did not pace the cave in restless, unproductive anxiety. They did not distract themselves with whatever equivalent of noise was available to them. They chose the most radical form of stillness they could find, the literal immersion of their physical bodies in the earth. And they studied and they prayed, day after day, month after month, year after year, 12 years, then 12 more months. The burial was not a single dramatic act. It was a practice. It was the 1,000 ordinary choices made in sequence to go further into the depth instead of retreating from it. Your burial is different in its details, but it has the same architecture. It is the practice of going inward when every instinct in you is screaming to go outward. It is choosing the discipline that strips the noise when the noise is the most comfortable thing available. It might be a daily practice of scripture and silence before the world starts making its demands. It might be the decision to stop performing the life you are expected to have and to start asking, with genuine honesty, what you actually believe, what you actually feel, what you actually want from God and from your own soul. The burial is the practice, and the practice is daily. And the daily practice is the cave. The third movement is the first emergence and the burning. This is the moment when something that happened in the cave tries to touch the ordinary world too quickly, before the full transformation is complete, and it burns. In Rabbi Shimon's case, literally, in your case, it might be the speech that was too sharp for the room, the truth that landed as judgment before the ground was prepared to receive it, the spiritual insight that came out as contempt for others rather than compassion. The burning is real, and it is necessary, because it sends you back. The burning is not failure. The burning is the most accurate possible feedback. You are close, but not complete. The second period in the cave is the one that makes you whole, not the first. Do not be afraid of being sent back. The divine voice did not say to Rabbi Shimon, "You wasted 12 years. Begin again." It said, "Return. What you have is real, but there is a second layer, and you are not yet carrying it. Go back and receive it." Being sent back is the most efficient possible communication from the deepest part of reality. Almost, not yet. One more year. The fourth movement is the second emergence, which is the full carrying. This is the Rabbi Shimon who comes out the second time and can hold both the fire and the healing in the same hands at the same moment. This is the wisdom that does not scorch the farmer for tending his field, but looks at the farmer and recognizes inside the ordinary act of plowing the image of God at work in the world. This is the capacity to love the world exactly as it is while holding inside yourself the full, clear vision of what it is becoming and what it is called to be. This is what the Zohar teaches in its deepest places, and what every genuine spiritual master in every tradition has pointed toward in their own language. Listen to me carefully. You are not being asked to become a mystic who retreats from the world forever. You are not being invited into the cave so that you can stay there. You are being invited into the cave so that you can complete the full journey into the depth, all the way in, and then back out, changed in the specific way that only that level of depth can change a person. Changed in the way that makes you more useful to the world, not less. More loving, not less. More present to the ordinary, not less. Now I want to tell you about a detail in the Talmudic account that most people pass over, because it contains one of the most unexpectedly beautiful spiritual instructions in the entire story. When Rabbi Shimon and his son emerged from the cave the second time, the Talmud describes what happened on the first Shabbat eve afterward. Rabbi Shimon was walking as the sun was going down toward the Sabbath, and he saw an old man running. This old man was carrying 2 bundles of myrtle branches. 2 bundles. And Rabbi Shimon stopped him and asked, "What are these for?" And the old man answered, "They are in honor of the Sabbath. 1 for the commandment to remember the Sabbath. 1 for the commandment to keep it." And Rabbi Shimon looked at his son, Rabbi Elazar, and he said, "See how beloved the commandments are to Israel." And in that moment, according to the tradition of commentary, his spirit was set at ease. He was healed of the burning. He was reconciled to the world. Do you understand what happened there, this great mystic? This man who had touched the hidden light of creation in a cave for 13 years was not set at ease by a fresh cosmic revelation. He was not restored by a visitation from Elijah, or by another heavenly voice, or by a spectacular sign. He was set at ease by an old man running with myrtle branches because he loved Shabbat. The ordinary, embodied, concrete devotion of an ordinary Jewish man doing what his heart told him to do on a Friday afternoon. An old man, 2 bundles of myrtle, running. That is what healed Rabbi Shimon. That is what the second emergence required. After all the fire and the depth and the mystical knowledge and the burning of farmers and fields, what restored him to the world was a single glimpse of sincere human love for God expressed in the most concrete, everyday, unspectacular way imaginable. Not a sermon, not a revelation. 2 bundles of myrtle and an old man who loved the Sabbath enough to run for it. This is what the highest wisdom always arrives at. Not the extraordinary, the ordinary, seen truly, the common life, loved completely. The myrtle branches that you and I walk past every day without stopping, suddenly illuminated by eyes that have been in the cave long enough to see what they actually carry. You are still watching this, and I want to speak directly into your situation right now. Someone watching this is in the middle of their cave. Not the beginning, where the fear is loudest and the loss is freshest. Not the end, where the light is most obvious. You are in the middle. The days are long and quiet, and you do not know if anything is happening inside you. You feel buried, not in the holy way the Talmud describes. Buried in the sand by choice. Turning toward God, you feel buried in the way that has no clear meaning yet. The way that just feels like absence and slowness and the strange embarrassment of not being productive in the way the world expects. You feel like the person you used to be is gone and the person you are becoming has not yet arrived. And you are wondering, quietly, whether the cave is real or whether you are simply stuck. I am telling you, the cave is real. The middle of the cave is the most important part of the passage. This is where the Zohar is written. This is where the deepest learning happens. This is where God is doing the slow, invisible, irreversible work of remaking a human soul into something that can carry a specific kind of light that only that soul can carry. The carob tree is feeding you even when you cannot see how. The spring is real even when it seems impossible. And the middle darkness is not the absence of progress. It is the progress itself, happening below the level of perception. Do not rush it. Do not trade it for the first exit that presents itself. Stay in it. Let the sand do its work. Let the silence do its work. Let the depth do its work. I want to tell you one more thing about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai that the tradition preserves, because it speaks directly to the question that sits at the center of every serious spiritual life. What is the relationship between suffering and understanding? What does the pain actually purchase? The Talmud says that when Rabbi Shimon's son-in-law, a sage named Pinchas ben Yair, encountered him as he emerged from the cave, he wept at the sight of him, not from joy, from sorrow, because Rabbi Shimon's body bore the visible marks of those years of extreme ascetic practice. And Rabbi Shimon, seeing the tears, said something that I have turned over in my mind for many years. He said, in essence, "Happy are you that you see me this way, for if you had not seen me thus, you would not have found in me all that you find." Not resignation, not bitterness dressed in spiritual language. This is a man who had come to understand, all the way down into his bones, that the wound and the wisdom are not separate things, that the marks on his body were not the price he paid for what he knew. They were the evidence of the path by which he came to know it. You cannot receive certain kinds of light without being changed by the passing of it through you. The transformation is always physical, always costs something in the embodied world, but what it produces cannot be reached by any other route. This is not an argument for suffering as virtue. The cave was not a place of deliberate self-punishment. It was a place of radical, sustained, whole-person orientation toward the divine. The suffering was incidental to the direction of the practice, and the direction of the practice is the only thing that matters. What is the direction of your practice right now, honestly? When you wake up in the morning, before the day begins its ordinary campaign for your attention, what is the first thing your soul moves toward? When you sit in silence, are you genuinely still, or are you mentally rehearsing conversations that have not happened yet? When you read scripture or sacred text, are you reading to be changed, or reading to have your existing understanding confirmed one more time? I am not asking these questions to accuse you. I am asking them because Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, buried in the sand of a Galilean cave, sat with those questions every day for 13 years. And the quality of the answers he found is preserved in some of the most profound spiritual literature the human race has ever produced. And those answers are available to you, not in some distant, idealized version of your life, in the actual structure of your days, right now, if you are willing to build the cave into them. Here are 4 practices drawn from the architecture of this story. Not obligation, not a program to complete, invitations to a practice. The first practice is structured silence, entered daily, every day, before the world makes its first demand on you. Give time to complete quiet, not meditation with a soundtrack, not silence with your phone face down nearby, genuine silence. Sit with whatever is actually true in you at this moment. Allow the surface noise to settle, and stay there long enough that something underneath it begins to be audible. This is the sand, not torture, not performance. The practice of removing everything that is not essential, so that what is essential can be heard. The second practice is sacred reading that reads you back. Choose one text, one passage, one verse that carries real weight for you. Not a verse you already have a comfortable and settled answer for. One that still holds a question open. One that still creates a productive discomfort in you when you sit with it honestly. Read it slowly. Read it as if it is speaking to your specific, actual, lived situation in this moment. The sages teach that every word of Torah contains 70 faces, 70 different angles of meaning, and that the face it shows you today is different from the face it showed you a year ago, because you are different from who you were a year ago. Let the text read you. The third practice is the practice of honest speech. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai lost everything for saying what was true in a room where the political pressure said to be quiet. I am not telling you to create conflict where none is needed. I am telling you that there is something true in you that you have been withholding. From yourself, from God in prayer, from someone who is waiting to hear it. The cave always begins with the true word that costs something. Let it cost something. The provision is already at the entrance. The fourth practice is the practice of returning without shame. Every time you emerge too fast, every time the inner fire burns something it should not have burned, every time you try to bring what the depth gave you out into the world before it has fully metabolized into love, go back. Return to the silence. Return to the sacred reading. Return to the honest prayer. This is not failure. This is the full rhythm of the journey. In and out, deeper, and then the world, and then deeper. Rabbi Shimon made the journey twice before he was ready. Give yourself the same grace that the divine voice gave to him, not condemnation. Return. And I want to say this with great care, because it matters. The second emergence is worth every day of the return. What Rabbi Shimon carried out of the cave the second time was different in kind from what he carried out the first time. The first time he carried fire. The second time he carried fire and mercy together, bound into something that could serve the world instead of burning it. That specific combination, fire and mercy in the same hands, is what the tradition calls true wisdom, not mystical attainment, not theological knowledge. Wisdom, the kind that can look at an old man running with 2 bundles of myrtle branches and be completely, genuinely, entirely restored. That is what is waiting on the other side of the full journey. That is what your cave is building toward. Now let me close with a direct word for someone who has been circling the entrance for a long time. There is someone watching this right now who has been trying for a long time to understand why they keep arriving at the same ceiling, the same wall, the same point in their spiritual life where the depth should open further and instead it closes. And they have been diagnosing this as a discipline problem, a faith problem, a worthiness problem. They have been telling themselves they are not serious enough, not devoted enough, not clean enough in their habits and their history to be trusted with something real. And none of those diagnoses have helped, because none of them are accurate. The accurate truth is this: you have been trying to emerge before the second year was complete. You have been trying to bring out what the cave was still forming. The burning happened, and it frightened you. And instead of receiving the divine voice as an invitation to return and go deeper, you retreated from the cave entirely, back into the noise, back into the busyness, back into the life where the depth is invisible and therefore safe, where it cannot ask anything of you. You know this is true, and you know, as you hear it named, that the cave is still there. The carob tree is still growing. The spring is still running. What is waiting for you inside that silence is not more suffering as punishment. It is not more stripping away as cruelty. What is waiting for you is the specific form of light that only your life, your particular combination of wound and gift and history and longing, can produce and carry, the light that only your cave can generate. Go back, not backward into the past, forward into the cave. One more year. The second emergence is your real life, fully begun. This is the message of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Rashbi, the one who hid in a cave for 13 years and came out changed at a depth that rewrote Jewish mysticism. A man who spoke a truth that cost him everything, who entered the cave with nothing but his son and the words of God, who emerged once in fire and was sent back without shame, who emerged a second time in fire and mercy together, who looked at an old man running with myrtle branches and recognized in that unremarkable scene the face of God himself, and was completely healed. This is what ancient wisdom preserves across the centuries and offers to us now. Not a fantasy about perfect holy men in a distant past. A living architecture for the transformation of a human soul in the present. And the present is now, and now is yours. Before I close, one last thing. After the cave, after the second emergence, after Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai found himself restored and present, he went on to become one of the most quoted sages in all of the Mishnah and Talmud. His teachings fill hundreds of pages of Jewish legal and ethical literature. His students carried his wisdom across generations. And the mystical stream that flows from his name has never stopped. It moved through the centuries, hidden for a time, then emerging through the Zohar, then into the great Kabbalah, then into every corner of Jewish spiritual life, and through it into the wider world's encounter with the depths of the divine. That is what is on the other side of the cave. Not retirement, not quiet dissolution into private holiness. Output, contribution, the pouring out of what was received in the dark into the lives of people who needed it and could not have gotten it any other way. Because the specific light you carry is the kind that only the cave can produce. Your cave is not removing you from the world. It is preparing you for a fuller entrance into it. The version of you that comes out the second time will serve differently, love differently, speak differently, see differently. Not because you have become someone else, because you have finally become fully and without apology yourself. I want to close with a blessing, not a borrowed line, one that belongs to this story and to you. May you have the courage to receive the sentence without letting it become the ceiling. May you have the wisdom to enter the cave and stay in it long enough to be completely changed. May you emerge the first time and be sent back without shame, and go willingly, knowing what the return is for. May you emerge the second time carrying both the fire and the mercy, ready for the ordinary world, ready for the old man with the myrtle branches, ready to be restored by the sight of someone running for love of the Sabbath. May the marks that the cave leaves on you become the evidence that gives others permission to believe the transformation is possible. And may the light that comes out of your cave, the specific, particular, unrepeatable light that only your cave can produce, fall on someone who has been in the dark long enough that they had stopped believing light was coming. It is coming. It is already on its way. And someone who needed to hear that today just heard it. Now, one more time. Leave this in the comments. My cave becomes my calling. Write it now. Write it as a declaration, not of what has already happened, but of what you are choosing right now, in this moment, to believe about the dark place you are in or will enter. Subscribe if you have not. Turn on the notification bell, and share this video with one person who is in the middle of their cave and needs to hear that the spring is real and the carob tree is growing and they are not alone in the dark. Go in peace and go deep.